Good morning and welcome back to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy and Mike. We're back again with another, this is a pre-recorded episode, so let's be careful there. This is a pre-recorded episode, but today's topic is quite of a mouthful. We're doing a mailbag today. We're going to be talking about the optimal Power BI architecture in the Fabric era. Is this an evolution or a revolution? It'll be interesting. So kind of a big topic. Great question. Let's any other news-related announcements, Tommy, that you'd want to throw out there or anything like that?
Well, just for you who get bummed when we do the pre-recorded, some of us, I think all of us have parents or at one point in time, and mine are in town. And the best thing, Mike, about having Italian parents is there's a Mecca. There's basically a pilgrimage they have to do every time they come to Chicago. Well, we have to go to the bakery. And I'm not going to give numbers out because, it's a public space here, but we spent 1/3 of what we've had before. And my parents were very worried. Would that be enough kind of thing? Well, it's been 2 days and we've already gone through it 3 times and there's still a ton. So this is like the best part of being an adult with Italian parents, because you deal with, the discipline and the way of living now. But now it's just like, well, we got to get a Chicago hot dog. I mean, what of us fully Italy? Well, when are we going to get the cannoli? And it's just a beautiful, very full time. So
it's funny. I have a friend of mine who just went over to Italy and spent some time in Italy, and he recommended. He said, "Look, this has been probably by far the best food I've ever had. You go there for the food; it's so good. You have to go there." And I was like, "Oh man, I just haven't been able to make it to Italy yet." So I'm still waiting for the Italian Power BI or in Fabric conference to show up. So if someone wants to
be there with you,
put up a conference there, I will be more than happy to help do multiple sessions, a pre-day conference, and everything else whatever I can do to stay longer inside Italy sounds like a wonderful idea.
I can brush up on my Italian very quickly for that too, because especially if it's in Rome. I mean, dude, if we do it in Rome where Marco and Alberto are, they have the cut pizza. So it's called tagliatelle, or not tagliatelle, that's a type of pasta, but intalia, which is how you cut it. So you say, hey, that's like the place we went to in Chicago.
Yeah, we went to a place. Tommy. So for those for reference, Tommy, when we were in Chicago, Tommy's like, there's a great pizza place. You have to go to this pizza place to get some pizza. And he's like, pizza by the inch. And with Tommy being around a bunch of engineers, they were like, well, are these pie-shaped inches? Because are we doing like circumference inch? Are we doing like, square linear inch? It's like, there's 2 dimensions on pizza by the inch. There's a width and a length of this. Are we specifying both width and length of inches, or just... So it was just funny. It was just pizza by the inch was
that's right.
A conundrum for
a lot of engineers. This doesn't work
all the engineers. they were having multiple headaches and issues with this. But yes, I do remember that, and it was actually very fun and super good pizza. So very, very much enjoyed that. And in Chicago, what's the name of the place? Let's give them some shout out.
Oh yeah, I don't think they need a shout out. They're doing so well, but it's called Bonci. Bonci.
So that's actually, even on our podcast, all the people who really care about pizza on our podcast are probably the audience probably intersects very slightly here.
Okay, Mike, this is actually great. Who doesn't like pizza? Like, and I'm not saying like they love it. I'm saying who has a visceral reaction to pizza?
Okay, you're probably a great point on there, Tommy, because I would agree with you. It's probably not necessarily anyone doesn't like pizza. It's probably more the idea of like, what's on your pizza that people have visceral reactions to, right? So
100%.
Right. Is it anchovies or not? That people have a very strong reaction to that. Yes or no, kind of like, and then I'll also add, pineapple seems to be like very visceral gut reaction to
yourself. It's really for a lot of people. I don't think they realize, Mike, when they put pineapple on their pizza, they're embarrassing themselves. Like, I mean, that's really what they're doing. They just don't know. And I just feel bad for them. I'm not even mad at them. It's very equivalent to like you walking outside downtown Chicago without any pants. That's what you're doing to yourself. And it's like, they're just unaware, so it's our job to help enlighten them.
Oh my goodness, Tommy. Yeah, well, I think for that reason alone, there'll be people that'll be in the comments talking about what they like or do not like on their pizza. So if you have a favorite pizza topping that you enjoy, definitely throw it down. I'm probably more of a meat lovers pizza person. So anything that has like a lot of meat things on it, that's kind of what I enjoy. But again, I only know, I think for lack of better terms,
Very Midwestern thing. Yeah.
I know American pizza. Like that's the only I know. I have only had pizza here in the U.S. Never gone over to Italy to have pizza, and I've heard it's very different there.
It's completely different here for me. Any new pizza place, any new pizza joint, I got to try it naked, cheese only, because that's a good sign of how good that pizza is, kind of thing. And then we can add toppings
with sauce. There's a sauce on it.
Yeah, it's just cheese, so your normal standard crust, sauce,
Okay.
cheese, and just let me try that, and then we can kind of start adding topics. So this is why I enjoy talking to you, because we said, yeah, let's just go right in the mailbag.
Here we are talking about pizzas for a while. Well, last question I have on your Tommy. Have you ever heard of the gentleman by the name of Mike Portnoy?
Mike Portnoy, I have not.
He runs Barstool Sports. I think he runs.
Yeah. He's from Boston.
He's from Boston, but he goes around, and everywhere he travels, apparently he goes to get a pizza from a pizza place, and he gives like scores out in front of the restaurant. He's like goes in, buys a pizza, comes out, and he'll have a pizza, and he'll give it a rating or something like that. Have you seen his rate? Have you seen some of these videos?
Is it wrong that I don't watch it because his name's not Mike Oklawani, basically, or Mike D'Antonio? I mean, if you're gonna go around New York pizza joints and you're from Boston, that's, I don't know, man. My red flags go up pretty quickly. I've seen what he's done.
I don't know if he's like claims like I'm from the Boston heritage, but I think he's from Boston. That's where he is. But I think he's more pizza and Italian, I think, is kind of what his background is. I don't know. All I've seen is him going around and rating a number of these places, and he's had some very interesting interactions with a lot of the store owners, because some of them come out like very angry, like, don't do this here, get out of here. And he was like, whoa, time out, dude. I'm just trying to like rank your pizza here. And he's been to some other places that he's been like, this has been the best pizza ever. And he ranks the pizzas. And I think one time someone said, you have to try our chocolate cake. He's like, I'm not sure about this. And they gave him the chocolate cake, and it like knocked his socks off, and he was like livid. Like he was like thinking it was so amazing. Anyways, I was thinking maybe, Tommy, whenever we do traveling, we should do a little like mini Tommy, the Puglia segment, the Puglia pizza rating. And we should, whenever we go somewhere, we should get a pizza, and you should eat a slice of it and see if you like it or not.
I'm completely down. Here's your rule of thumb. This is your rule of thumb. This is all you need to know if you want to know if you're going to go to a good pizza place wherever you are. The more the pizza joint looks like a laundromat outside, the better the pizza is inside.
Oh boy, yes.
Because if you have to advertise so much, that means you're not focusing on your pizza. So I want a place where you're like, that can't be the place, because that is the place, and that's the best pizza you're gonna have. So
that's interesting. And is this a Chicago observation, or is this a general observation?
To me, it's a city thing. Like it's the
city observation. Okay. Yeah.
My favorite place in Brooklyn. Shout out to Nino's. You're like, nah, I'm not sure about where. Like, I don't even think there's a pizza place here. I see the colors. I see red, white, and green. I don't see a pizza. I don't even see a sign. And you walk in, there's two tables. We're like, is this waiting for the subway? It's the best. It will knock your socks off.
Oh my goodness, that's funny. Well, I want to see these places at some point. So at some point we'll do some travels. You said Brooklyn is where this was?
That one's in Bay Ridge in Brooklyn. Yeah. So
awesome.
We will do. Yeah. Okay. So, hey, Microsoft, when you're not listening, conference in New York City, please make that 2 weeks, because we're going to need 2 weeks for that. So, and then somewhere in Rome, and we will be just set. So
we'll be there. We'll be done. Awesome. Well, then with that, we've done enough rambling around the beginning part of this thing. Let's actually jump into our actual main topic. Tommy, do you want to read off our mailbag today and just kind of get into this new fabric era question? And we've been taking having a lot more topics around what fabric is, how fabric works, in addition to Power BI, even though this has been started as a Power BI podcast. So anyways, take it away, Tommy. Where are we at with the fabric question?
In the pre-fabric era, as far as I know, the most optimal architecture for data set and report development was the following. 1, collect data sources into data flows. 2, create shared data sets with load data from the data flows. And 3, create reports built upon the shared data sets. In the fabric era, how does the optimal architecture look like for data set report development? Is the prefabric architecture described above still the most optimal? If not, what's your idea on it? Will Power BI Desktop remain the primary tool for dataset development, or Will the service take its place? Thanks for your
Ooh,
time. Regards, and I'm going to botch the name, but thank you, Balaz.
Balaz. That sounds good enough for
So,
me.
but I
Good question.
love this question, Mike.
No, I think, Tommy, you made this all up. I think you went to ChatGPT and you said, I'm going to ask this question. I'm going to ask Mike, do you think desktop will stay around or will it be the service? And then you said, make up a funny name at the end and a different name so it doesn't sound like me, Tommy. So I
So
think this is a question you submitted, Tommy, and you just put it in with a different name.
I used my cousin's name, yeah. So, but I'll just, but Mike, here's the thing though. You asked this 6 months. This is going to be really strange. You asked this 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would go, you know what, Mike, you're right. But even what they've done with the ability to edit your data lake in desktop, Mike, I think this
Yeah.
deserves a whole other conversation here. I'm going to start right off the bat, and I'm going to just put out the statement that I don't think there is a universal standard way that right now Fabric's working. There are a lot of good ways it does, but can you tell me there is one always the standard way that makes Fabric better than not in terms of a process?
I want to take another note here. I want to say, what do you define as better? Right. I think how you measure certain things also impacts a better when you say the word better, right? So I want to just unpack that word just
Sure.
slightly and give you my definition of what maybe that means.
Mhm.
You could let me just give you some
Could you
options, right? You could
could you
measure
do
better
that with the
by.
Power BI in the pre-Fabric? Could you do that in that realm?
I mean, I think there was less options in pre-fabric, right? So we didn't really have as many options to go with. I think the pattern is the same, but what individual tools that you use throughout that pattern are probably now different. And now you have different ways of storing information and data inside Fabric. And so this is where I think things get a little bit more designed, I guess, custom,
Mhm.
catered. Let's call it the word, it's more
Yeah.
catered to what your company needs and what your company is actually comfortable with as far as skills. So, okay, let's define better. All right, what is the better way to define this? I think you could define better as in number of compute units, right? So before I would buy a pro or premium per user license, and you kind of were given everything, all access to everything under the sun for Power BI, right? It didn't really matter what it was. Microsoft, if you were premium per user for $24 a month, you can build as many data flows Gen 1 as you wanted. You could
Yeah.
have them interlinked as much as you needed to. You could run them as often as you wanted. It would just be handled, and Microsoft would just kind of like make it work for you. So that was pretty much how it operated in the old world. In the Fabric FSKU land, you're kind of playing this game of balance between I need enough capacity to run the system, but I don't need so much capacity that I'm trying to overpay or have a lot of extra capacity left over, because you're basically prepaying for capacity.
Mm.
So I think, to me, when I look at this, I think there's there's the better is it's all graphical user interfaces. It's clicky, draggy, droppy. It makes things easy, right? So there's a ease of working with the data, and then there's like an optimization path that says, is it the most efficient, cost-effective way to run the data, right? So I think when you say better, you have to kind of think about what in your company are you trying to evaluate on, or what is, the return on the investment that you're trying
Yeah.
to look for. Does that make sense? Like what I'm trying to
No,
describe there?
completely. And to me, if you were to kind of boil down better in the prefabric era and just the Power BI, there's really three components that I would always think about. You're dealing with your speed, your accuracy, and the flexibility. And whatever kind of, if you're doing data flows or just doing that all on semantic models, those are really the three kind of components: is how fast is it's going to run, how accurate, and just the Power BI. There's really three components that I would always think about. You're dealing with your speed, your accuracy, and the flexibility. And whatever kind of, if you're doing data flows or just doing that all on semantic models, those are really the three kind of components: is how fast is it's going to run, how accurate can we, in a sense, trust it. Obviously, we want it as accurate as possible, and can it scale up and can it scale down from a flexibility point of view? Can I modify this after it's already created? In Fabric, man, I think we have those three, but I think that we have additional layers that have to be considered. You're dealing with how complex is my process, because you may be dealing with your lake house and a notebook and a pipeline. You're dealing with how many artifacts are part of the process, how many workflows and domains am I dealing with? And I think you're dealing honestly, you have to be so conscious of your capacity in your CPU more than I think in the Power BI era, because we've seen, to your point, you only had so many tools to play with Power BI, but we know now, well, if I want to use a data flow gen 2, I know it's going to really eat up what I'm doing. That might be the
Correct.
best path right now, but it has to be consideration. So to me, with Fabric, better is how well does it do complex or flexibility, speed, and accuracy on top of those additional things, the number of artifacts, how complex is my process, and what am I eating up? But regardless, you're still trying to get to the end goal. And I think that's the biggest thing. The end goal, Mike, would be how quick can I refresh this? How sure can I be of the numbers after a refresh or it being automated? At the end of the day, that's the bare bones of whatever better is when it's automated. If I go, if we go to Sicily and start eating pizza, do our data set's going to reflect the right numbers? And is it going to refresh on time? Or whatever. I use refresh because that's a Power BI thing, but is the number going to get there on time? Those are, I think those, if you want to boil down better, it's those two things. How fast does it run, and and how accurate is it?
Yeah, I think you're also comparing a little bit of apples and oranges in this realm as well, because Pro and Premium per user was pretty much built on this model of
Another great point.
per user pricing, and then Fabric is not built on per user pricing. It's built on capacity pricing, right? So you can get more out of the Fabric SKUs, but there's also more flexibility to optimize things as well in the Fabric SKU. So I don't know if they're directly comparable. So let me just talk about let me answer to the first part of the question. The first part of the question was, collect all your data sources using a data flow. Data flow would then create basically CSV files somewhere inside, either in a blob storage account if you connected it, or it would collect those directly inside a Fabric environment, or sorry, a Power BI environment. And then from those CSV files, you could then pick them up again, do more transformations, and pull them in. The pattern of using data flows to build tables, the reason why you did this is because you're able to build reusable tables across multiple semantic models. And you're able to lift out of the semantic model the ability, like when the semantic model had the M code in it, it would take longer for the semantic model to refresh. So you could independently refresh different tables at different speeds based on your needs in the data flows. And then you could also share them across multiple data sets. So the whole reason of like data flows being part of your process, I mean, why not, the simplest architecture is just make a semantic model, use M in the semantic model, load the data you want, publish it, and done. Like that's the easiest method here. So I think, the reason that architecture kind of evolved out of the Power BI Pro and Premium per user was we had challenges with, I couldn't take one table in a semantic model and share it with a separate semantic model. It just didn't work very well. And organizations want some semblance of a data warehouse. I need to put all the tables in some place and pluck and pull from them to distribute them out to my team. So I will say this. I think that was the right architecture in the Power BI Pro and Premium per user era. I think now with the F SKU, what I want to bring to the thought here is the F SKU is not bringing necessarily more or simpler experiences to the Power BI report developer. I think what the F SKU brings is it's actually bringing in a brand new persona or individuals that we never had playing in our data space, right? So all this is doing, instead of thinking of it as like, we had I think of it this way. It's like there was a bubble, there was a circle or bubble around reporting, and it was basically Power BI. What we've done is we've added additional bubbles for other things, and now our entire surface area of what we can do has increased in size. So how I look at Fabric is now another portion of our business that can work right next to our analysts and business teams. And we can have the lake house, we can have pipelines, we can have full SQL databases in there. And I'm to the point, right? I'm actually changing my tune here a little bit. When SQL came out for Fabric, I was like, okay, I don't understand why. I don't understand why it's here. But now looking at it as a developer and a report builder of things, I'm now seriously considering like maybe Fabric should be partly considered for some of our operational systems. If I'm building a web application or if I'm doing something where data needs to be moving in and out, Fabric supports the ability for me to put in that operational SQL database. So I get all the SQL richness goodness. And it's a button click. I need a SQL database, click, done. The database shows up. And then I can start connecting that to my applications and talking to it. Or if I need user-defined functions, those can also exist. So what I'm seeing is Fabric is bringing a lot of other data products to the world. And so I still think the pattern exists, right? We're still going to have the pattern of centralize all your data. That does not change. Get it into semantic models for reporting and even now agents, right? So now you're going to chat with your data. I think you can do chatting with your data directly to a lakehouse. I think that would maybe be okay. But honestly, the most effective part of chat with your data would be point the chatbots or the agents at the semantic model that has all the enrichment, like the relationships, the descriptions, the everything else. I mean, that's still going to be key. So I think at the end of the day, when you're serving data, you're going to be focusing on serving data from semantic models to your organization through reports and other experiences. And I think the other thing I think I had an aha moment around here is in the Power BI space, you're always building reports. It's pretty much reports and maybe a metric set. That's maybe what you were doing. But now think about all the things you get for Fabric. You get a semantic model, you get Explore, you explore your data experiences, you get reporting, paginated reporting, you get agents with chat with your data. So there's I think you get metrics and metric sets, like all these other things, goals are now there. So I think the idea here is we are thinking too small about our data at this point, right? We're talking a lot about just reports, and I think Fabric extends the number of ways you can distribute your data out to other experiences.
So your everything you said here, I imagine, is where people have the biggest frustrations, I think, right now with Fabric. One of my favorite episodes we ever did was almost about this mental misconceptions, and we kind of brought into the BI space. And one of the ones that always stuck out to me was this idea that they did this study where there was like a jam company and they had 3 jams to pick from, and people would pick the jams. But as soon as they made it like 11 jams, the sales went down because people had more choices, which made it harder to pick a single thing. And I think what people's frustrations are now, I agree there's a new persona, but I think for a lot of people, they're jumping into this Fabric world, not as the new persona. They're the same person, but now they have all these additional choices. And we'll try to boil it down here. You mentioned a ton of things. We have the SQL databases, data agents, we have metric sets. I mean, even things that are outside of just the Power BI, your definition of just Power BI. But even in just Power BI, Mike, there's a lot of choices. And my frustration is it goes back to the core thing that I kind of live by any product or thing that we deliver is if you're going to do something, if you're going to produce something, if you're going to create something, it has to be better at what it's doing than other things. Otherwise, there's no reason to exist. It's the whole Steve Jobs mentality on why he built the iPad. Well, it's better than browsing the web than the phone, and it's better than watching movies than the computer. So that's why we have it. But you're mentioning all these other kind of features here: metrics, metric sets, scorecards, reports, dashboards, paginated. So we're introducing all these things for people. And now we're still trying to define the word better, right? So you have just added a whole other layer of complexity on this better thing. When we both did our definitions of better, we were talking about the process to build a report. But neither of us said report. We didn't say a report that has to go through this process. We kind of assumed that. So now, Mike, let me ask you, and to just to really just add complexity here. When we say better in the Fabric era, I think probably the better way to ask this question is, can we define a outcome or output that's better than a report? Is there something better than a report, or is this always in the eye of the beholder?
I think it depends on what your needs are. Right. I think so. I'm just taking some notes here. I'm like, talking about the optimal solution. Right. So let me give you another example here. And this is where the evolution of things have gone. Right. So Microsoft is taking products that have existed for a number of years longer than Fabric has been around. Pipelines have been around. So pipelines are an evolution of Azure Data Factory. And those have been around forever. I mean, a long time. I mean, since I've been using Azure, those have been some semblance of those have been around for a period of time. So that's been out for quite a while. It's a very robust technology, efficient. It has a lot of UI based on top of it. It's not the easiest to use. It's a little bit of getting used to as far as a developer standpoint, but you can do a lot of creative things with pipelines. So when I look at the optimal solution for Fabric, you're now adding all these other rich Azure-like experiences directly into the Fabric space. So again, back to your point, Tommy, like if you are comfortable in these more advanced solutions, you have more capabilities. And I'll go back to another example here that I'll use around real-time intelligence or real-time data, right? Power BI, Pro and Premium per user has some sort of real-time stuff. You could do a streaming data set. You can send data to powerbi.com and it will update reports and dashboards with information. But the experience was very limited. So yes, you could do it. Yes, there was some real-time experience there, but it was kind of, very narrow. You had to do a lot of work upstream of the streaming experience to then be able to send data in correctly so you could actually read it and use it and leverage that data inside these real-time streaming models. And you had to be very kind of technically there. I think in the Fabric world, if we look at like real-time and streaming, there's a lot more in the ecosystem to make it more graphical. It's easier to use. We're doing a lot more event-driven things inside the Fabric world that is being designed with a technical side. It's still there, but we're making it easier for you to use it. So we're getting more capabilities is what I'm trying to describe here. So when you look at the optimal solution, not only do you have to say like, I'm just getting data from a SQL server or data from Excel or data from SharePoint, we have more options to where to pull data from, right? Is it real time? Is it a webhook? Is it now a SQL database? Is it something else, right? All these other experiences now can be brought to us, and so Fabric is just becoming a wider trough for us to put more things in. So if I think about it, it's like there's like four main aspects: loading data, which would be something like a user data function, a data flow, a pipeline, real-time analytics, something like that, right? Then there's compute you need to use to load the data in. Then you have store and transform. Storing and transforming is your lakehouse, your SQL database. There's a KQL database. There's a SQL data warehouse. And then there's notebooks for doing transforms, right? So these are all new experiences that have existed in existed in Azure that are now being brought to Fabric. I still think the best way to serve data is going to be the semantic model. Now, it may be a semantic model with an agent attached to that semantic model, but I still think, when I look at the other landscape of like other experiences, when you look at Databricks and you look at Snowflake, both Databricks and Snowflake are coming up with semantic models. They're coming to the same conclusion that Microsoft has already been at for like the last 20 years is the semantic model needs to be there. It needs to be a memory cached version of data for the user to interact with, because going back to the original server and grabbing all the data from SQL queries is just slow.
Yeah.
It doesn't work as fast as having in-cache memory column storage. Great. We're already there. Like we've already got that.
Also what the semantic model covers too, more than just a report now.
Correct. And so then the final stage of this is like the interactions, right? Your interaction is how do you interact with the data? Is it an agent? Is it a metric set? Is it a goal? Is it explorations? Is it paginated reports, right? So I think a lot of times we default talking about building a report. And I think that's a very narrow-minded way of looking at what I need to do to get the data out. And I think there's a lot more. The number of organizations that still just sit on top of SSRS and paginated reports is phenomenally large. And we're underestimating the ability for people to need to get away from that and getting into just Power BI reports or some other online experience. I think people are just used to going to my inbox. That's the context of where I'm at with my email. Go to my email, there's a Excel file or something there, and
You
that's
don't
where the
know what
data
you don't
shows up.
know. You don't know what you don't know, and a lot of companies don't either. So I completely agree with that.
So again, I'm just trying to say so I think with Fabric, the ideal, so we're talking about like what's the best ideal architecture, right? I'm going to give you my recommendation, but that's usually a starting point. There's a lot of other things. So the fact that there's like an ideal architecture, and then there is this evolution of that to, there's a lot of different other patterns you can do. And so I think what you were speaking to earlier, Tommy, was the 3 V's of data. Maybe there's 4. I can't go. It always seems to change.
Velocity, and volume,
Var-
velocity,
volume,
velocity,
velocity, the speed of it. So how much of it?
variability.
You have variety or variability, right? That's how different it is.
Yeah,
And I
I
always
can give
forget
you
the 4th
3.
V.
I give you a solid 3 though.
We'll go with the solid 3. There's more out there, but the 3 V's of data kind of changes now, because at some point you would tap out. So I would argue in Power BI Pro and Premium per user, if your data got to a certain size, data flows just didn't seem to be very efficient, and they would take a long time and they would time out. So we were constantly fighting timeouts of data flows Gen 1 in Pro. If they ran longer than 2 hours, stuff starts failing. So you better have your data somewhat quick. And then we started doing like incremental refreshes and small, like we started working around that to get bigger data into our models, because it was just taking too long for all the information to be loaded. All we're doing now with Fabric is just giving you more variety, and you have the ability to handle larger volumes of data at scale.
There's an irony there.
Let me pause there.
Yeah. So I got a few things. I love a lot of what you said. With premium per user, it's almost like the CCs of data, because you could do a lot. You didn't have to worry about the whole capacity falling.
Sure.
But now,
even the semantic model size,
right?
like the semantic model size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had to be somewhat conscious, but not really. Like it wasn't the same compared to now. You have all these options, yet you are so much more limited. You have such a bigger budget. Now, what I want to do, Mike, is I want to agree with you. Then I want to take a sharp left and vehemently disagree with you.
Okay, go ahead.
So that's where we're going to go.
Start with the good news, and then we'll go to the bad news.
I agree with you on a big statement. I've come to the mountain, and I've come down from the mountain, Mike, and I realized that no person really wants a report to see their data. It's just right now the best avenue to do so. It's the best mechanism or platform to do so. But if you were to ask everyone what they really wanted and break everything down, how to see their numbers, right now the report just makes the most sense. But that's not what really no one really wants. Just the best way to do it. Now, that's the part where I kind of agree with you, because we have all these other options. Yeah, we have metrics, we have data sets, we have real time. There are so many ways I can deliver your data to you. But that being said, Mike, when we are saying better now, I think we have to split it into 2 groups when we talk about better. There are universal betters and cultural betters. To me, this is the only thing that makes sense in Fabric, because of the additional choices that we have to choose from. Universal betters are the ones we've talked about: speed, accuracy, complexity. We have to always keep those in account. Those are always going to be the case. But when it comes to the output, yeah, the semantic model is the core, but how people are going to view their data, well, I can give them real time. I can give them a metric set, but I have to train them. I can't just, deliver this out into the report or the org app and say, learn it, figure it out. We know if I change my report too drastically, people are going to have an issue, right? You can't expect them just to figure things out. Anytime, Mike, especially when I worked internally at FTE, when we would change a report drastically, we did a webinar before we made those releases, because we got backlash before that. And this is not because people are idiotic or just not intelligent enough. It's because you're changing drastically the user interface of something they rely on. It's just our job. Now I have all these other things, like you said, metric sets, real-time scorecards, paginated.
Sure.
All those require to get everyone on board. The least a skilled person, we have to get them on board for that to be successful. So I have all these options, but that doesn't mean that it makes the best sense for that company or that team, just because I have all those options. So for me, I have to split better and this whole conversation here on better into the universals, the tech better, and the cultural better. Because without those two, this doesn't work. And I think that's a big part of me, Mike, where I still look at reports, and if I want to, I still want to introduce that. I still want to go through that flow. Anything else, I have to have a plan on how I'm going to get that adopted. So I'm gonna pause on that statement, and I have a feeling you're going to disagree with me, which I cannot wait for. But what's your take then on all these other products that we have require a cultural better as well, besides just our technical better?
I think this is where we were talking about in the very beginning of this, is like, define what better means to you, right? I'm not going to, right now, it feels like the most prominent mediums that answer people's questions. So let me come back to your comment you said earlier, Tommy. You said no one really wants a report. Okay, I would kind of agree with that statement, but then I would kind of like want to expand that idea a little bit more. Well, if no one really wants a report, what do they really want? Mm-hmm. My question would be back, unpack that statement. And really, at the end of the day, it goes back to what I think this whole business intelligence thing has been anyways, right? I need information to make decisions to run the business, right? We have business objectives or goals. We talked a lot about like KPIs or OKRs, things that are like corporate objectives we want to get done as a business. So what are those identified objectives? And all we should be doing is the data should be supplying information to make the decisions to get you closer to those larger objectives. That's what the data is being doing. So the whole reason we do business intelligence is there's collection of information, and we're trying to make decisions from information. So, the goals of us at the business intelligence side should be, what can we do, whatever medium it is? How can we use the medium to help people answer questions that they walk away and command action, right? I'm going to use this data to leverage, or not leverage. I'm going to use my data to talk to my boss about hiring another sales representative because we're underperforming on sales.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to use data to identify the weak salespeople in our team and then go work with them or provide training to them to then hopefully increase their sales performance. Right. That's something that we're doing. I mean, all this is human interaction stuff.
1,000%. Yeah.
Right. So whether, the way I look at the world today is we're looking at today, reports seem to be that main new medium, right? Here's a bunch of visuals. I can click on them. I can filter them, and it gives me different information. This is just what has been created as of today. Who's to say that's not going to live on moving forward in this new era of AI? And so I want to just expand some of our thought here, right? A couple episodes ago, and this is actually very recent, I was saying, look, I was talking this is very Star Trek-esque, right? We're going to talk to the computer. The computer is going to build an app that serves a very specific purpose, and then you'll use that app for a period of time and you'll throw it away. You'll be done. You'll move on to the next thing, whatever the next thing is. And I think this is very relevant here because, what if the next new experience is an agent-like experience where the agent is building a mini data application for you to interact with the data? Like, what if the agent can produce, like, you have a semantic model, you have information that's documented. What if you talk to the agent and say, I'm looking for this kind of question, and the agent scans through existing reports. The agent looks at other information and potentially could produce to you a brand new graphic, a brand new information, and this whole agent space where it starts deep thinking on stuff. Mm-hmm. Right? What if you could send, again, I'm just really spitballing here at this point. I don't know if this is ever going to happen, but what happens if I could send a table or some SQL? So, hey, talk to the agent, it builds some SQL queries against some data that's out there, or it writes it out and then produces results in a table. It takes the output of that table, thinks on that data, and then it would say, okay, based on the question that was asked and the data that I'm given, it runs it to like 4 or 5 different agents and say, okay, 5 different agents, Claude, Grok, OpenAI, ChatGPT, whatever. It could basically source that information through multiple agents and say, okay, agents, here's the problem statement. Here's the data. Think about this. What's the best next course of action? Right. And then the agent goes like, so I think we're at a place right now. It's not designed yet, but how close are we going to be to actually getting to a place where we might actually do this? We'll talk to the agent. We'll start framing some of the data story, and then we'll give it back to a number of other agents where it can just think through things. And then it'll present to us like, okay, you asked this question. Here's the data that I found. Here's the SQL statement that I ran. Oh, and by the way, and I thought about this data a couple different ways, and here are some actions that you could do to provide a desired outcome. What kind of desired outcome do you want with this?
Gosh,
let's think about this. And so it could be literally this helper thinker thing that goes back. And that's honestly, that's what we're doing as analysts anyways, right? We're always trying to drive for some sort of outcome, some sort of result. And so it just happens to be today, the best medium to do this is in a report and let the user do that.
Right.
But who's to say in the future that that's not the same medium or way to do this? I'm going to pause there because I said a lot of different things there.
There's a lot of great things. First off, I got to touch the agent thing real quick, and then I think your bigger point. But first off, this idea on I want to create a SQL agent in Copilot, and I wonder if I could do that where it only is good at SQL. It's just a SQL agent, and then we have other things talk to it. I wonder there's something there, Mike, rather than having an agent trying to do everything, a single agent. So there's an idea.
We know this. We know this is true.
That's how. Yeah,
we already know that. We already know that agents are going to be specific to what you're trying to produce things against.
That's when they're the best kind of thing.
And that's when they're best. They're going to be the best when they're like tuned for specific jobs, and you give them a lot of.
But you can tell one to interpret that question and say, "Hey, you're the SQL converter, basically.
Yep.
Your skill, your tool is this. Take the statement, make the SQL. Another guy runs it. So first off, we're not there yet, but when we get there, we're going to be running. We're going to be.
But I want to just kind of pause just for a moment there, because the agents, and so just one little footnote. This is a footnote on what your comment is. So write down what you're going to say next time, because I don't want you to lose it.
Okay.
All right. So
I'm not going to forget. No.
Okay. Footnote on that point around the agents. Agents, like if you talk about like the syntax of a language, the syntax of writing SQL, the syntax of writing T-SQL, Oracle SQL, PostgreSQL, like all the different SQL languages that are out there. The agent can be trained on every single piece of documentation ever known to man about those, and it can also be trained on open repositories that have, millions of lines of code of written SQL that some is good, some is bad, some is optimized, some is not. But the agent itself can have the most knowledge around every single syntactical thing, and to bring in anyone and say to hire them to say that they're going to know more than an agent will about SQL, I think is a misnomer, honestly. Yeah. The mechanics of the language, the mechanics of how to write the SQL statement, the agents will know absolutely more things. And like if you want to use something like a roll-up, right? You could talk to an agent and say, hey, I'm trying to produce this roll-up on this, this, and this. It's a more advanced SQL function. Not everyone that I've experienced just learns what rollup does. Mm-hmm. And that was something I learned in my grad classes. And I was like, wow, this is a really powerful feature, but no one really asks you to write that. So this is where you could like leverage the agent to do these kinds of things. And the same thing for Python. This goes for Python. This goes for any other language that's out there. The agent, one agent can know all the languages way better than I will ever know them.
So this is what we said. Welcome to the conduct. You want to know the skill to learn? It's learn how to be a conductor, because that's what we're in. We're in the conductors era.
Yes.
How do I make sure that I can dictate and run these different agents?
And even like optimizing, right? You can write your SQL once and say, optimize this, make this faster, make this better. Like you can have, so I think that's the part where I like to look at leveraging AI is saying, okay, let's look at what AI is doing and what is it really good at? It's really good at knowing it knows everything about everything. That's where you need to leverage it right now. And at some point it'll get better about thinking. Like it doesn't think the best, I think, yet at this point, but if you ask it directed questions around the language and how to get accomplish things with the code, it's really good at that. And
Yeah.
the reason I'm saying this is because I'm now building throwaway apps. I'm building an app to do a very specific thing in 30 to 45 minutes that does exactly what I want. And with, to your point, you're conducting it as opposed to like writing the code, the technical side of it. And I think you're right. I've never heard the word conducting the way you're using it, but that's actually a really good analogy of like, we want to be more of conductors on top of the data, conductors on top of the agents that run on top of it.
That's literally what they're calling is the conductors era.
Yeah, this is I haven't heard this before, but I really like that term. That's a great term. I'm going to definitely use it more. Sorry. Okay. Enough of my footnote. I just want to put that in there.
Everyone knows by this point, Mike, that we're going to have at some point on our topic, no matter what it is, something about AI.
Something about AI.
It's
literally everywhere.
About this.
It's changing though, but it's changing it's physically changing how I do things. So if it's impacting us as pro developers, like we have to be comfortable with leveraging these tools in front of ourselves because we can do more of these conductor high level thinking things and letting the agents jump in and actually write the code. And that's to your point, Tommy, all these things I named out, like store, transform, load, all these different things, the different experiences, there's a lot of technical aspects to those, but those technical aspects are being removed because the agents are able to come in and fill the gap.
And also, when the Matrix does, they're going to treat us a little nicer, I think, because we talk about them so much. So
hopefully,
I want to bring it back a little. So, I think the bigger point that you're making, but the AI stuff has a big part to play with this. But at the end of the day, again, you boil everything else down. You made the point though too about information, and my core tenet, more especially when we're talking about better. And I guarantee you, Balaz, when he asked this question, wasn't thinking about all these other kind of things. It's probably just report development. But at the end of the day, like Mike, a core tenet I always had that was a non-measurable, but something that I always looked to was, I'm non-measurable and the measurable. I looked at not just how many times a report was being viewed, but I looked at what time a report was being viewed, the hour of the day. And the reason why was I wanted reports, to me, is just, it's another, you said this originally, it's another source of information to dictate what you're going to do that day or that week. So really, it's like your outlook for data, for numbers, instead of text, which when text is in a certain order, it tells you your boss is telling you, guess what you're doing today. But all it is simply letters in a certain order. That's all it is. So honestly, I try to think of a report in the same way, is the numbers in a certain way, in a certain format, and a certain structure that should help that person. The best report to me, or the best way that I'm proving value anywhere I'm at, regardless I'm an analyst or a director or a consultant, is you check your email in the morning and then you check those reports, because they're telling you what you're going to do that day. And so right now the report's just the best medium, just like Google used to be the best medium. And that's the point. I was going to talk about the AI stuff, but I guarantee you, I bet you're not using Google as much anymore. And I bet a lot of people, like you're probably not using Outlook as much now because you're probably using Teams.
100%.
But and I think you're going to boil it down where we are here in 2025 in the middle of the summer. Reports are still a great medium. And I think when you talk about better, when you talk about what's the most optimal way, I think you boil it down and it's still semantic models. It might not necessarily be your data flows Gen 1, as Balaz said, especially because, like I said, there's a lot of other technical sides of, are you going to do a lake house or are you going to do SQL database? But I think the core, like I'm still focusing, Mike, just like you are, on my solutions are centered around a semantic model, because now outside of just how powerful it is, it does have a lot of more output besides just a report. But the report itself is such a huge part. So when I say better now, I'm considering the best way to create a semantic model, the most flexibility for a semantic model with my budget that I have with the capacity. If I were to boil it down, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that one as well, Tommy. Like it's going to be around again, it's a balancing act, right? So everything to me, this is a balancing act of like, what do I, we have with Fabric, we've been given a lot more capability. there's a lot more we can do at our disposal. And today we're talking about medians of reports. So agents is changing things. How we interact with our data is we're on the elbow of something brand new here that's going to be changing again here very shortly. And one thing you'll notice, I think, that's coming out of this is all the agent stuff that you're building, not on your browser. It's not desktop. I mean, it's all in your browser. It's not on desktop, right? So agent stuff is going to require you to stay in the cloud. Mm-hmm. And so I think we're also accelerating, this need away from we need to be able to build more in the cloud. We need to have everything living in the cloud. Everything has to be existing. And now with the PBIP format, you can get synchronization, right? You can easily build in the service and not worry about losing your changes, right? You can always download the report. Even if it's just a thin report, you can still download it and edit it in desktop if you want. And there's, one of the main tenets from Rui in the PBIP format is everything that you can do in desktop is 100% compatible with PBIP format, and that'll all be available and built for you in the PowerBI.com service. So, when I look at this question here, and if we go back to okay, I really do want to answer these questions here in kind of rapid succession, right? How does the optimal architecture look like for a data set and report development in Fabric? I think you stay very close to the same thing, right? You could still use Data Flows Gen 2. The principle is the same. Land the data somewhere, right? You can land it in a Data Flow Gen 2 inside a Lakehouse. The only thing that I think really shifts here a little bit is in the previous world, the Data Flow Gen 2 or Gen 1 was the processing of data and the storage of data. We've replaced that with a Lakehouse. Lakehouse is becoming very key about whatever you do, right? The SQL servers can talk to Lakehouse. Everything you write with data transformations can write to Lakehouse. Notebooks, pipelines, everything else, Data Flows Gen 2, everything writes to Lakehouse. So I think the ideal architecture is it doesn't matter how you get it in, it all lands in the Lakehouse. That's where you're going to put it. It's going to be stored in Delta format. It's going to be in the Lakehouse. That gives you the most amount of flexibility to do the next thing you want to do with it. We're still going to stick with semantic models. So however you get it from the Lakehouse into the semantic model, still the same. Now there's different patterns. It gets more evolved. It's landing raw data, then processing it. I mean, it's still the same pattern you would use for data flows. It's just now on top of the Lakehouse. So, my preference here is, okay, it's still load data in with some tool. You could still use Data Flows Gen 2. You're going to have it stored somewhere. I think the ideal place is a Lakehouse. And I even would argue now it's Lakehouse and maybe even some SQL servers. I prefer Lakehouse. SQL Server, I've been finding some really good things about it, but it's still a little bit buggy in some situations. I've had times where I land data into the SQL Server and it doesn't turn on and my reports all go blank. So I've had some weird, I've had some weird bugs with the SQL side things. So it's a little bit deterred me a bit, but regardless, you're storing the data somewhere, right? Yeah. And then your Power BI semantic model, and I really like Direct Lake. Direct Lake is really interesting to me. So I really like the Direct Lake experience. And so that's really interesting to me. So it's always going to be a semantic model. Now, the output, right? The question here is, what is the optimal architecture for data set and report development? Yeah, it's still semantic model reports. But I don't think it will be that way for very long. I think there's going to be a lot of other new experiences around agents and agents talking to your semantic models to get information out for you. I think that will also be very useful for us as well. And so I think that's my ideas on it. I think I would say, look, it doesn't change much. All we're using it, we have different tools. The core principles is load it in, store it, semantic model it, and get it to a report. Yeah. That's still the same. So that does not change. Some of the tooling is slightly different. And then you can kind of pick different flavors of things depending on your department and your organization. If you're a super SQL heavy organization, fine. Let them use more SQL servers inside Fabric. No problem. Then you're catering your team's skills towards the SQL server side of things. If your team understands Python, push them towards notebooks. Or if you feel like your team has a threshold of learning notebooks, push them towards notebooks. Or if you're cost sensitive, the gap going from Data Flows Gen 2 to a notebook loading data, you have Data Wrangler. Very similar experience. Doesn't do everything as well as Data Flows Gen 2.
Got Copilot now.
But you got Copilot now. And so I think Copilot is going to be, you can ask it what you want it to do, and it will help you get through this. I mean, I can't tell you the number of organizations I've been through that have started with Data Flows Gen 2, I've worked with them together, and we've learned some simple things in Python, and we've learned how to leverage the agents to teach us what we need to build. And here we are. A couple months later, we're now deleting our data flows Gen 2, and we're now replacing them with notebooks, and we're seeing the CU drop. And we're seeing more efficient use of our data. So I really do think there's this mentality of just build it so it works. Once you understand how it works and how it's built, then come back and start optimizing.
And Mike, I don't think you could be more on point here on this. And I know saying this is this equivalent to Frodo putting on the ring, and Alex Powers is going to hear us, but I think there's a move away from data flows here, because the biggest things that changed to me are what you said around the lake house, and I think notebooks. They are so powerful. And if you are intimidated by them because it sounds like the data engineering world, take some time, because it is so immense, so powerful in the Fabric process. It's really hard to have an argument against it. And to me, I don't honestly, I don't know if there is any good argument against incorporating that at some point into your workflow, if not the base workflow. There's nothing you said that I disagree with you in retro, or on the other side of the coin. I am doubling down on what you said. I think the core part is your semantic model and the lake house. And yeah, you're introducing probably your notebooks here rather than the multiple things you did with data flows Gen 1. It's had a great life. I'm not saying in all cases, but again, if you're on that kind of cusp of, do I really, really need to know data flows or notebooks? Do I really need to start learning notebooks? I think you do. I think this is the time. This is the time, whether or not you're somewhat there, not there at all. I don't know if there's a good argument against it, but no, I think at the end of the day, though, the process stays the same in terms of we need to get our data in. There's a better way to do that now with lake houses. We need to do some transformations. Maybe you do that in the semantic model, but what the lake house is, and the in a sense, the legs or the tentacles that a lake house has, from it can go to a semantic model, it can do direct lake, it can touch my applications, it can touch other systems because it becomes a SQL endpoint. It makes it so powerful that the default is a lake house to a semantic model, but then you have so many other options, going back to when your company defines better for how you want to see your data. So I'm a complete agreement with you here. The biggest thing I would only add to what you said that I think is really the thing that people need to incorporate into their process for better is you're no longer in the premium per user, your PPU playground. So you have to be very conscious of how many things you're creating and how complex those things are. I've been burnt. I've been burnt big time, where I was like, I had to increase my volume because I couldn't even access Power BI because of a single data flow. So tells you how good I am at what I do, I guess. But but I know, but again, the biggest thing is
this just goes back to
hyper.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah,
but this is going back to optimization, right? So like again, you're doing just something initially to get something done, right? You knew data flows Gen 1 or Gen 2, and so you knew what you understood.
Want to get some output, yeah.
You would get some output, right? And then use that mentality. Again, you were also limiting yourself because you're on an F2, right? If you were on a larger F SKU, you would have had no problem. It would have just run, and you would have been none the wiser. So
yeah.
You would have kept it. You would have just not changed it. So, it's when you're trying to tune and optimize, there's now better tooling. And so I compare data flows Gen 2 against the internal Fabric tools. You could compare data flows Gen 2 against like Talend or other visual based data engineering tools. And yes, it's a very comparable product from those other tools. They're very expensive because those other visual graphical interface tools. But my opinion here is like, look, the game that we're playing here has changed. I'm no longer comparing, do I use data flows Gen 2 versus Talend? I'm actually comparing, do I use data flows Gen 2 versus a Python notebook or a user defined data function or something else, right? So when I look at the information that I'm given, the game of which I use comparisons it's totally different. And so I think the pricing of whatever the data flows Gen 2 is just wrong. It's too high. Get away from it. Move out of it. There's better, more efficient ways. As a user, I want to be able to move gigabytes of data for as cheap as I can. That's what I want to do. And so I think these new tools that are put in our hands, Python notebooks, Spark notebooks, they're much better designed. Even data flows, there's all these pipeline things. They're much more efficient now than what they used to be. And so that's the whole game to me has changed. And
I think that's the best way
I
to
love
put
this
it,
game.
though. Yeah.
The game has changed because I was studying this in college in my master's degree around this. And so it's been really nice because I love the BI space. I understood the semantic models, and all of a sudden I get all this big data technology that just shows up to work with Fabric. And I'm like, man, this is my two worlds colliding, my love of Power BI and my love of big data and technology pieces. And boom, now we're here in the same place, and I can do these really incredible projects for a fraction of the cost I could before. And
I think a lot of people, I think a lot of people are in this space too because they love it. Can it be stressful learning a new language, a new tool, new platform? But like, I think that's kind of the fun. We all get some sick joy out of it at the same time, Mike, because you look back to what Power BI was even 4 years ago, or what Fabric was 4 years ago. Like, we're constantly navigating what the best practice is. And I think Boaz's question here, this will kind of be my wrap up here, but let's ask this question next year. Let's do the same thing in July of 2026, and we'll have Boaz hit our annual review of what better means. And I have a feeling, I put money on this, that I think this was going to always change. This answer is never going to be the same because our technology is going to be different, and we're going to, Microsoft may come out with something in October and we're going, notebooks, they're way too expensive. It could happen. It could totally happen. It probably will happen in a few years. But at this point, we have to play with the cards that were dealt. And this is a question that's always going to change. But
the race to the bottom at this point.
Yeah,
it's a race. Seriously, when you look at Google, AWS, and Microsoft, it's a race to the bottom. It's going to be who can do the most amount of data processing with the least amount of cost. That's what we're going to get to, and we're already seeing the race occurring, and now the race is also occurring inside of Microsoft itself.
Right,
like even inside their each team, like the data flows team is a different team than the notebook team. The notebook team is a different team than the SQL team. They're internally competing against each other for products and giving you the right experience at the lowest cost. So it's going to change. Good for us, the consumers, because we now have options, whereas before we had very few options. But it's changing things. So I like this. This question's a great question. I think this is a really solid. I think you're right, Tommy. We'll have to revisit this later and say what does better look like here. If I had to answer these questions directly, how does the ideal or optimal architecture look like today? Yes, it's landed in Lakehouse, get it into a semantic model, and get it into reports. That's kind of what it is right now. I don't think the pre-Fabric era design system with using data flows Gen 2 is now optimal. And I'm looking at it purely from a CU compute storage standpoint. There's better solutions now. So you need to change your architecture to get lower cost, more optimized solutions so you can buy smaller FSKU and serve more people. I think that's where we're at right now. And those are kind of basically my ideas. The last question I'll note here is, does Power BI Desktop remain the primary tool for data set development in the Power BI service and will be displaced? I think the answer is no. I think Power BI Desktop will be a premium tool for professional developers always. It will always be there. But I see the service getting a lot more capabilities. Like, you don't build notebooks in desktop. You don't build pipelines in desktop. There's a lot of other Fabric experiences that you do data shaping and manipulation before you even get to the semantic model. And I would argue there's only a couple feature gaps between what desktop is doing and what the service can already do. And we're not far away. If you notice what they're building, everything Microsoft is building is service-based. Everything now is there's so many more teams building service-based pieces. There's only a couple feature gaps, I think, that are in desktop that you can't physically do in the service. And once those gaps are closed, you're going to potentially see desktop updating slower. You're potentially going to see less development around desktop. And I think you're going to get a better agent integrated experience inside the service.
So that last question, I'm not going to answer directly. All I'm going to say is, desktop team, if you're listening, I'm rooting hard for you. But no, I honestly, it's a good point, Mike. Like, we have to be comfortable in both spaces. They're doing a lot with desktop. I think they're still putting a lot of work because you can still edit a direct link model using desktop, which is surprising that they did that if you were 100% right? Because if it was all service, then why would they put that feature out there? But I agree. I think the biggest point is if you're comfortable with desktop, it's still going to be around. I don't think it's going to go as fast as data flows have, but where's the primary tool? I spend more of my time in the service. Like that's probably the truth. And
I do.
I do a lot of report development, in desktop, but the first place I'm going for usually modifications or something because it lives in the service is a good point. But I really want to visit this in maybe 6 months. Let's see what changes.
We already have DAX. We already have DAX query view in the service. We already have a lot of the other features. I can make. Yep, I can make models. Wait till Tyndall gets there, right? Once there's a Tyndall editor in the service, like I think that's probably part of the roadmap. It makes sense to get it there. But once you get, like, that's one of the major reasons why I go back to desktop is to get into the Tyndall view and see what's going on there.
Right.
And so we're getting really, really close to not really requiring that anymore. I don't need to build reports in desktop anymore. Almost all those features exist in the service. Now, I will argue this. In the service editing of report building, you don't get any of the new visuals, any of the new lightning bolt, card, all those visuals do not exist in the service when you edit. So like you are, again, back to your point, Tommy, there are some very distinct limiting features that the service does not do that desktop does do. Right. But I'm also to the point where I don't want to be downloading an 800 megabyte desktop file every time I want to run in desktop. Like it's getting absurd. We're almost at a gig now. Yeah. Like I remember when desktop was like 50 megabytes.
You still have volume 1 on your computer, right? On a hard drive.
I still have Power. I have versions of Power Designer on my desktop. Very, very early versions back in like 2015 when they came out. We need to do a
video on that. Just open and install that. Let's see what it looks like.
I don't even know if we can. Silverlight. We have to have Silverlight. We have to run it on Silverlight. I don't even know if that even exists anymore.
I think you type in a command into your MS-DOS.
I don't know. So we'll see. Like that would be a fun episode to do as well. Just kind of go back and reminisce around that one as well. But anyways, that being said, it'll be interesting to see where we go from here. Regardless, I think if you stick yourself or attach yourself to Power BI and Fabric, you're going to have a good career. There's a lot of new development. And just, as a general rule of thumb, you're probably going to want to move out of the Pro and Premium per user spaces into the Fabric space because it provides so much more capabilities. And the challenge will be for you as the users is to get your leadership to buy into like, this is something that we should invest in. And I think we're getting closer. Like the feature richness is getting capable there. And you can use your existing tools. You can use your existing Snowflake. You can use your existing Databricks to support data coming into the Fabric world. But I think when you talk about access and control, you're going to want to use a single system, which will be Fabric. It's becoming very robust. There's a lot of good features coming out. Anyways, awesome. Thank you so much for listening. This is a long episode. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. I hope you enjoyed this conversation around the optimal architecture in Fabric. I hope this gave you a couple things to think about or unpack with your team. That being said, please share this with somebody else if you found this conversation valuable. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
You can find us in Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. It helps us out a ton. And please share with a friend since we do this for free. Do you have a question, idea, or topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode? Head over to powerbi.tips/podcast. Leave your name and a great question. And finally, join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central, and join the conversation on all powerbi.tips social media channels.
Awesome. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time.